Hearts Full of Midnight, Chapter 1, Shoebox. There's a quality to the night the eye can't escape. No matter how dark it seems, there's always light. Maybe just a little, but it's there. Even when the moon is playing hide and seek and an overcast sky has hidden the stars, there's still light somewhere in the universe where you can find your way. It's man who robs the world of light. For millennia we've built and lived in boxes that trap the dark so neatly and so perfectly. It stands to reason that we would eventually construct a thing that, when it goes off, it's brighter than the sun. It feeds our need for opposition, for balance. Heat where it's cold, cold where it's hot. Breeze when it's stuffy. Calm for all the noise living creates. Consider then that a home can be black as pitch when there's no love in it. Same with a marriage. Ideas as wholesome and warm as a home or wedded bliss turned out to be the best boxes of all, able to trap the absence of light and hold it prisoner. A perfect dark. I'd like to say I considered all this in that moment there in the living room, but it didn't come to me until some time later. I never get deep or philosophical without a bottle of bourbon to drive me to the shindig, and I never stay long at the party, even when I go. Instead, I watch Sally Burgess from across the tiny living room of that shoebox apartment, her standing between me and the window facing the empty alleyway, and I marveled at how she could cast a silhouette onto something as black as night. Or how the nighttime could still glint off the nickel-plated .38 she was turning over in her hands, like she was trying to figure out which was the business end and who she wanted in front of it when the gun went off. I imagine it was the same way for our boys when they were building the other thing, the one whose light dwarfs suns. Who gets it, so the world can know it exists? Sally? My throat hurt when I spoke, a delayed effect of having a giant maniac wrap his mitts around you and squeeze. Hard to believe. It'd only been a few days since I'd been fighting for my life, and now this. The distance between the two felt like years. Mrs. Burgess? You should be careful with that. I can hear the bullets clicking in the cylinders when you move it. It's loaded. Of course it is, she replied. She hadn't been nearly choked to death, but the words weren't coming out of her throat any easier than they did mine, just for different reasons. Her back was to me, turned just enough to her left that I could catch a glimpse of what she held, but still obscuring her face from me. Denton keeps it like that for protection, I continued. Sure he would. A piece doesn't have much use if someone breaks in and you have to load it before you start shooting. She said nothing. Her eyes were lost in the .38 and what it meant. But that doesn't mean it has to be used, I went on. I inched a step or two in her direction. Not too much. I couldn't be sure that she wouldn't turn the gun onto me if it came to it. That was enough to keep me hesitant. There's plenty of firearms out there that have never been fired, you know. It's one of the few tools in the world that works better if it's never used. I kept up this way, and the tone of my voice lulled her. She let me get close, approach her the way a husband might approach his wife, to wrap his arms around her waist when she's busy with the dishes or dinner. Instead of stealing kisses, I reached out with my good arm and took the gun from her hands. Slowly. Real easy-like. I brushed her shoulder, and my forearm felt the fabric of her dress as my fingers closed around the cold metal. That was as intimate as we got. You shouldn't be doing this, I said once I had the .38 in my hands. You know that. You do, right? She turned to face me in the dark. I could smell the perfume she'd worn earlier that day, light now as it began to fade. And I could smell the booze, the red wine that had either given her courage or brought reason to her troubled mind. It was hard to say which. and though she was hidden from me by shadow, I could picture the face as I'd seen it before, so clean and fresh, her brunette bob too short to frame her cheeks and jaw the way they needed to be framed, leaving the youthfulness captured there stark and far from alluring. Just tired and lost.